There are moments in the unfolding of connection when something shifts in the invisible realm, when a decision is made not with words or declarations, but in the quiet sanctum of someone's inner world. And today carries that particular quality of transformation that only the soul can recognize before the mind understands it, before the external world shows any evidence of change. And the angels want you to know that what you've been sensing, that subtle alteration in the energy between you and another, that feeling of something different moving beneath the surface, is not your imagination creating stories, but your intuition reading the truth that exists beyond what eyes can see or ears can hear. You've been carrying questions in your heart, questions about whether you matter to someone who seems distant, whether your presence registers in their consciousness the way theirs occupies yours, whether the love you feel is reciprocated in any real way, or if you've been building cathedrals in your mind while they barely notice the ground beneath their feet. And what's happening now in the unseen dimensions is that a reckoning is taking place within them, a confrontation with their own heart, that they can no longer avoid, a moment where pretending becomes more exhausting than acknowledging, where running requires more energy than turning around. The angels watch these internal revolutions with tenderness because they understand that human hearts don't change on command, that realization moves at its own pace, that someone could be standing right in front of love and still not see it until the exact moment their soul is ready to bear the vulnerability of truly seeing. And that moment, dear one, is unfolding now in ways you cannot yet measure, but may already feel as a change in pressure, a shift in the air, a sense that something which was closed is beginning slowly to open. This is not about predictions or guaranteed outcomes, not about timelines that promise reunion by a certain date or reassurances that everything will arrange itself according to your hopes, but rather an acknowledgement that consciousness itself is moving, that someone who's been unable to meet you in the depth of feeling you've been offering is finally beginning to understand what they've been turning away from, what they've been too afraid or too confused or too defended to fully receive. And the angels don't bring this message to inflate your expectations, but to validate what you've been sensing, to confirm that your perception of energetic change is accurate, that you're not foolish for feeling that something is different even when nothing looks different yet. You see, the realm of spirit operates ahead of the realm of form. Decisions are made in the heart before they manifest in behavior, and awareness dawns in the soul before it translates into action. And right now, there's a dawning happening that you're connected to, that involves you, that has everything to do with the love you've been holding even when it seemed unreturned. And the angels want you to sit with this knowing not as a reason to wait with bated breath for someone else's breakthrough, but as a mirror showing you something about your own power, your own capacity to love with such authenticity that it creates ripples in another's consciousness. And perhaps the real message here isn't about what someone else is deciding, but about what you're being invited to decide about yourself, about your worth, about whether you'll continue to pour your precious emotional energy into the uncertain spaces of someone else's awakening, or whether you'll finally turn that energy toward the garden of your own becoming. And maybe the shift you're sensing isn't just about the moving toward you, but about you beginning at last to move toward yourself with the same devotion you've been extending outward. And in that movement, in that sacred turning, everything changes not because someone else decided you matter, but because you decided it first. The absence of words doesn't always mean the absence of feeling. And one of the deepest spiritual truths about human connection is that silence can be full of meaning, heavy with unspoken emotion, pregnant with everything someone cannot yet give voice to. And perhaps you've been interpreting the quiet as evidence that you don't matter, that your presence doesn't touch them, that the connection you feel is one-sided and you've been loving alone. But the angels see what you cannot see from your vantage point. They see the way your name surfaces in someone's mind at unexpected hours, the way memories of you interrupt their attempt to focus on anything else, the way they reach for their phone and then stop themselves, compose messages they never send, rehearse conversations they're not ready to have. And this pattern of reaching and retreating, of moving toward and then pulling back, is not indifference, but it's opposite. It's a behavior of someone who feels too much and doesn't know how to hold it. Someone who recognizes a magnitude of what could exist between you and finds themselves terrified by that recognition, because to acknowledge it would be to admit they've been running from the very thing they most want. There's a particular kind of emotional paralysis that occurs when someone realizes that what they feel for another person has the power to change everything, to dismantle the carefully constructed walls they've built around their heart, to challenge every defense mechanism they've relied upon to feel safe. And in that paralysis, they become distant not because they don't care, but because they care so much that caring feels dangerous. And their silence, which you've been experiencing as rejection or indifference, is actually the sound of someone struggling with their own heart, wrestling with fear, try to reconcile what they want with what they believe they can handle. The angels want you to understand this not so you'll excuse poor behavior or accept breadcrumbs of attention when you deserve full presence, but so you'll stop internalizing someone else's confusion as evidence of your inadequacy. Stop believing that if you were enough, they would somehow magically know how to show up, because someone's inability to meet you emotionally has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their own internal landscape, their own wounds, their own unfinished business with love itself. You've been the kind of woman who loves with her whole heart, who doesn't hide what she feels, who extends herself vulnerably and authentically, and that kind of openness is rare and powerful, and it threatens people who haven't yet learned to be open themselves. It challenges them, confronts them with their own emotional unavailability, and sometimes that confrontation manifests as distance because retreat feels safer than transformation, and yet, there's something shifting now. Something in the way they're holding that distance that's beginning to feel different, less like avoidance and more like preparation, less like running away and more like gathering courage. And perhaps what's actually happening is that they're finally getting tired of running, finally starting to question whether the walls that have kept them safe have also kept them lonely, finally wondering whether the risk of vulnerability might be less painful than the ache of continuing to hold themselves apart from something real. The angels watch this process with such compassion because they see both of you clearly. They see your open heart that has been offering itself without guarantee, and they see the defended heart that has been afraid to receive, and they're working in invisible spaces to help soften what is hard, to help illuminate what is confused, to help someone see that what they've been running from is actually what could save them. But this softening, this illumination, this seeing cannot be rushed or forced, and perhaps the greatest spiritual practice available to you right now is to stop trying to convince someone of your value through your availability, your patience, your understanding, your willingness to wait, and instead to let your absence speak louder than your presence ever could, to let the space you create by stepping back become the very thing that helps them understand what they're losing. There's an exhaustion that comes from loving someone who can't quite love you back in the way you need. A particular weariness that settles into your bones when you've been holding space for two people's emotions while the other person barely hold their own. When you've been one reaching out, initiating, maintaining, hoping, believing, waiting. And somewhere along the way you stopped noticing how much you were bending, how much you were accommodating, how much you were making yourself smaller to make them more comfortable. And the angels see this pattern, this unconscious self-abandonment that happens when we love people who aren't ready to love us fully. And they want you to know that your fatigue is valid, your frustration is reasonable, your desire for reciprocity is not asking too much. And perhaps what feels like a spiritual test or a karmic lesson is actually just a natural consequence of trying to build something real with someone who keeps one foot out the door. You've been interpreting their ambivalence as something you need to overcome through more love, more patience, more understanding, as if the right combination of your efforts will finally unlock their capacity to meet you. But the truth that sits heavy in your heart, the truth you've been avoiding because it feels too painful to face directly, is that no amount of your doing will make someone ready who isn't ready. No amount of your emotional labor will heal someone who hasn't committed to their own healing. And the angels are not bringing this message to devastate you, but to liberate you from a belief that you hold the power to change someone else's heart through the force of your own devotion. There is something deeply feminine in the impulse to nurture, to hold, to create space for another's growth. And that impulse is not wrong or weak. It's actually a reflection of your capacity for unconditional love. But when that nurturing becomes one-sided, when you're giving and not receiving, when you're holding and not being held, that sacred feminine energy becomes depleted, turns into something that drains rather than sustains you. And what you're being asked to do now is not to love less, but to direct that love toward yourself with the same intensity you've been directing it outward, to become the one who holds space for your own emotions, your own needs, your own dreams, to stop waiting for permission from someone else to believe you deserve devotion, and to simply decide from the authority of your own soul that you do. This doesn't mean you have to harden your heart or become cynical about love. Doesn't mean you have to stop caring about someone who's mattered to you. But it does mean you have to stop sacrificing your peace for someone else's comfort. Stop contorting yourself into easier shapes so they don't have to stretch. Stop accepting inconsistency as if it's the best you can hope for when deep in your bones you know that real love doesn't feel this uncertain, this anxious, this much like you're constantly auditioning for a role that should already be yours. The angels want you to feel the weight of what you've been carrying, not to increase your burden, but to help you recognize that it's time to set some of it down, that you were never meant to carry the full weight of connection alone. And perhaps what they're really asking you to decide is whether you'll continue to orient your life around someone else's awakening, or whether you'll begin, gently and firmly, to orient your life around your own. And in that reorientation, something powerful happens, because when you stop making yourself available for crumbs, when you stop accepting the bare minimum, when you stop waiting in the spaces where someone else refuses to fully arrive, you create a vacuum, an absence, a clarity of consequence that often becomes a catalyst for the very change you've been hoping for, not because your absence manipulates them into action, but because it finally allows them to feel the full truth of what it means when you're not there. The angels carry a message that cuts through all the confusion, all the mixed signals, all the hope and heartbreak that have been tangled together in your chest. And the message is this: your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to see it. Your value doesn't increase or decrease based on whether another person chooses you. And the love you've been seeking outside yourself has always lived within you, waiting for you to turn around and recognize it, claim it, anchor yourself in it, so completely that no one's confusion or ambivalence or inability to show up can shake the foundation of who you know yourself to be. You've been looking at someone else's hesitation and making it mean something about you, translating their fear into evidence that you're not enough, not interesting enough, not beautiful enough, not worthy enough. And in that translation, you've been abandoning yourself in the exact way you've been hurt by them abandoning you. And perhaps the real invitation here, the one the angels have been trying to help you see, is that the pattern of abandonment doesn't start with them pulling away. It starts with you pulling away from yourself, forgetting your own magnitude, dimming your own light to make someone else more comfortable, waiting for external validation when you already contain everything you need. There is a knowing that lives in your body, a wisdom that predates all your doubt and insecurity, and that knowing has been trying to get your attention, trying to tell you that you don't need someone else's decision to validate your decision about yourself, that you don't need their clarity to access your own, that you don't need them to choose you for you to choose you. And when you finally hear that knowing, when you finally let it guide you instead of the fear of being alone or the fantasy of what could be, everything changes not because circumstances change, but because your relationship to circumstances changes, because you stop giving your power away to someone else's process and you reclaim for your own. The angels see your heart as whole, not as something broken that needs fixing, not as something incomplete that needs another person to make it full, and they're inviting you to adopt that same vision, to see yourself as they see you, as someone who's been so brave and loving, so vulnerable and reaching, so generous and offering, and who now deserves to receive that same quality of love from the most important source, which is yourself. This isn't about becoming hard or self-sufficient to the point of closing off. It isn't about pretending you don't want partnership or connection, because the desire for love is human and holy, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to share your life with someone who truly sees you. But it is about understanding that the foundation of any real partnership is two whole people choosing each other, not one person holding themselves together with hope, while waiting for the other person to figure out what they want. And right now you're being asked to focus less on what someone else is deciding and more on what you're deciding, less on whether they'll finally come toward you, and more on whether you're willing to stand firmly in your own value regardless of what they do. And in that standing, in that radical act of self-honoring, you become magnetic not through manipulation, but through authenticity, not through games, but through genuine self-possession. And people feel that they sense when someone has stopped waiting for them to assign worth and has claimed it for themselves. And often it's the very thing that wakes them up. But even if it doesn't, even if someone remains unable to meet you, you'll be okay because you'll be standing on your own ground, rooted in your own truth. And that's a kind of freedom that no relationship can give you and no rejection can take away. And so we arrive at this moment, this threshold, where all the longing and waiting and wondering converges into a single question that only you can answer, not about what someone else will do, but about what you will do. Not about whether they'll finally see your worth, but about whether you'll stop looking to them for a confirmation of what you've known all along. And the angels stand at this threshold with you, not to push you in any direction, but to remind you that you've always had a choice. Even when it felt like you were at the mercy of someone else's indecision, even when it seemed like your happiness depended entirely on whether they would wake up and recognize what was right in front of them, you've had the power all along to decide how much of yourself you'll give to uncertainty, how long you'll wait in the space of someone else's maybe, how much of your precious life force you'll invest in a connection that hasn't given you the basic reassurance of knowing where you stand. The decision that someone else made today, the shift that's occurring in their consciousness, is less important than the decision you're being invited to make right now. And that decision is about reclaiming your energy, redirecting your focus, remembering that you came into this life with a purpose that extends far beyond whether one particular person can love you the way you deserve. And perhaps the angels orchestrated this entire experience not to bring you a partner, but to bring you back to yourself, to show you where you've been giving your power away, to reveal the places where you've been seeking external validation instead of trusting your internal knowing. And in that revelation, there's grief. Yes, because there's always grief when we let go of what we hope would be, when we accept that someone we love may never be ready for us. But there's also tremendous freedom, a lightness that comes from no longer carrying the weight of someone else's confusion, from no longer contorting yourself to fit into spaces that weren't designed for your full expansion. And perhaps what you're discovering is that the love you've been longing for, the recognition you've been craving, the devotion you've been hoping someone else would offer, all of it has been available within you this entire time, waiting for you to turn inward with the same intensity you've been turning outward, waiting for you to give yourself the consistency you've been asking someone else to provide. And as you make this turn, as you begin to honor yourself with the same reverence you've been extending to someone who couldn't quite receive it, something shifts in the energetic field. Something rearranges an invisible architecture of your life. And doors that were closed begin to open, not because you manipulated them open, but because you stopped standing in your own way, stopped blocking your blessings with the belief that you needed someone else's approval to move forward. The angels want you to know that what happens next is not predetermined, that the future remains unwritten and full of possibility. And the person who's been occupying so much of your mental and emotional space may indeed come forward, may finally be ready to meet you in the depth you've been offering, or they may not. They may continue to hesitate, to retreat, to choose their fear over the vulnerability of real connection. And while that outcome would hurt, while it would require you to grieve what could have been, it would also clear the path for something or someone better aligned, more available, more ready to love you without hesitation. And perhaps the real message here, the one that will continue to unfold in the days and weeks ahead, is that your happiness was never contingent on any one person's choice, that your worth has been constant even when their recognition of it has been inconsistent, and that you've always been walking towards something greater, something that will honor all of who you are. And today, right now, in this moment of listening, you're one step closer to arriving, one breath closer to the life that's been waiting for you to stop waiting and start living. And the journey continues, the story unfolds, and there's so much more the angels want to reveal about what's coming, about what's already in motion, about the paths that are opening even as others close. And if you're willing to keep walking, keep listening, keep trusting the whispers of your own soul, then everything, absolutely everything, is about to make sense in ways you cannot yet imagine. But you'll have to stay present, stay open, and perhaps meet me here again soon, because what comes next will illuminate everything that came before, and you won't want to miss it. Take a breath. Let yourself feel whatever is present. If a word, a feeling, or a quiet recognition has surfaced as you've listened, you might hold it gently in your heart, like a seed that needs no announcement, only acknowledgement. The angels work in the stillness between thoughts, in the pause between heartbeats, and sometimes the most powerful response is simply to witness what is stirred within you without needing to explain or defend or understand it completely yet.